No matter who you are, no matter where you've been from or come from, no matter what you've been through, you have seeds of greatness. I have seeds of greatness. That means that we have something within us that is so great. It's just part of who we are. We didn't do anything to deserve them. We didn't create these things. We were born with these seeds of greatness, right? But in thinking about seeds, what do you do with seeds? Whether you get them from a little a gardening store or Home Depot, and you get a little packet of seeds, and we know it does no good to keep them in the packet, right? We have to take them out of the packet, put them in the ground. We have to water those seeds. We have to nurture those seeds. We have to give it everything it needs in order to thrive. Well, the same is true for me and you, right? We have seeds of greatness, but if we don't do anything with them, we can't expect to get the results we want. So you have to do it as well. But when you do, and you're doing it by watching training like this and filling your mind with the good, the pure, the positive, the stuff that's going to make you a better person, again, personally and professionally, that is when your seeds take root as well. And the beautiful thing about a seed is you never get the exact amount you put in. A seed is just so tiny, right? But the results are sometimes 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times greater than what you put in. One of the things I learned most from Zig was how to be a better communicator. And what I'm going to be showing you in just a moment, I actually initially learned at that Born to Win seminar when I was 18 years old. Honest to God truth. And since then, I've just been a student of it. My degree in college is in communications and specifically organizational behavior. I am passionate about helping people to understand each other. So when we dive into this and why it's important to communicate, is the connection is where we thrive. We have to have connection at work. We have to have connection at home, and you cannot connect if you don't know how to communicate. So the reason we're doing this training specifically is to help you to, first and foremost, you got to understand yourself, right? You can't fix anyone, right? You can only fix yourself. So understanding who you are is the first thing, and we're going to do that today. But then when you're able to understand yourself, and then you can understand other people, right? You can see that not everybody is the same as you. And news alert there that you don't want everybody like you. And just because people are different doesn't make them bad and you right, or them wrong and you right. It just means they're different. So, but you can't know that unless you understand the differences, which we're going to talk about. And you have to also learn to adapt. You cannot treat people always the way you want to be treated. Sometimes you have to treat people the way they want to be treated. Sometimes you have to lead people the way they want to be led. And when we see this and understand ourselves, first of all, understand someone else and the differences, and then learn how to adapt, there is gold in this. And what it does is when you understand yourself and others and you adapt, now you're going to have better results without a doubt. You'll have more success in every area of your life. You will absolutely have more fun. I mean, who wants to be in a relationship that's not getting along? That's not fun. So I assure you, when you have this connection, it's more fun. It's just easier. You have better relationships all around. And that's what we all want. But then there's more peace, more harmony. There's not as much conflict. I mean, most people don't like conflict. Some people do, and I get that. And I'll show you which people do in just a minute. But the harmony and the peace is what most of us seek. And really, to have better understanding of each other means less frustration. And it just makes life go better, right? So going back to those seeds of greatness, right? If we all have something within us that is so unique, guess what? Each one of us has a different seed. And that means there's opportunity to connect, but there's also a lot of opportunity to have disconnection. So that's what this training is all about, to help you to have better connection, no matter who you are working with or doing life with. So let's just kind of hypothetically, I know we're doing this online, but let's just say you and I were sitting together. We went to lunch, we went to grab a cup of coffee, and we were sitting down just trying to get to know each other, like most people do, like, hey, so tell me about yourself. Do you have a family? Where are you from? How many years have you lived there? What do you do for a living? Do you love it? How did you get into that? Just conversation. Just what friends do, right? And let's say in all these questions I'm asking you, I ask you, so generally speaking, would you say, are you more outgoing or are you more reserved? And probably you would say, well, I'm a little bit of both. It kind of depends on the situation. And you're 100% right, because we're all a little bit of a little outgoing and a little reserved at different times. But if you had to pick, excuse me, one or another, meaning 51% versus 49%, you had to pick, are you more outgoing or reserved? What would you say? And I want you to answer that for yourself right now. Each of us are always a little bit of outgoing and reserved, but we do tend to lean one way or another. For example, if you are more outgoing, you probably, a little more pep in your step and more social. Whereas if you're more reserved, you might be a little quieter. There's no right or wrong, but I want you to write down the answer so you don't forget, which one are you, outgoing or reserved? Because there's a second question I'm going to ask you. And the second question, again, let's go back to like we're having coffee together and I'm asking you questions, and I ask you another question. I say, so generally speaking, and I know you're probably a little bit of both, but are you more task oriented or are you more people oriented? Meaning like task oriented would be you're more focused on getting things done. Like at the end of the night, when you're thinking about all the things that you got done, you're like, I got this done, I got that done. You're thinking of your to-do list. You're probably even pulling out a pen and checking things off while you're laying in bed. I mean, you're just very task oriented. Or maybe you're more people oriented. And at the end of the day, instead of thinking of all the tasks that got done, maybe you're thinking, oh, I got to see Tom. I had lunch with Sue, people oriented. So there's no right or wrong, and we are a little bit of both. But if you had to choose 49% versus 51%, and which one would you say you're generally a little bit more of? Would you say, are you task oriented or people oriented? And I want you to write down the answer so you don't forget. So what does all this mean? Well, believe it or not, and without me even meeting you, I know more about you than most people do just by asking you 2 questions. And the reason is because we all behave in certain ways. We all have different personalities, but we, more importantly, have different behavioral styles. And those behavioral styles are based on those 2 questions that I just asked you about. And this is called the DISC model of human behavior. And this is what I'm going to be taking you through in detail. And hopefully by the end, you'll have a real good idea of who you are, because that's really the key, is understanding yourself, but then also thinking about the people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis and seeing that maybe their style is a little bit different than your style. And that could cause some miscommunication. It could cause some disconnection. So that's why we're doing this. But listen, here's the thing. For those of you who said you are more task-oriented and outgoing, you are what we call D's, high D's, but actually no, D stands for driver. You're dominant type. You get results. You're all about getting things done. You're not afraid to take charge. You're a natural born leader. And I'll go through in more detail more about your style here in just a second. But for those of you who said that you are outgoing, but you tend to be more people oriented, you are in the inspiring category of behavior, the high I's. And what that means is you love people. You're just naturally outgoing. People are drawn to you. You're inspiring, you're influencing. You just are kind of the life of the party, right? People are drawn to you for that reason. And so it is, all of these are very, very, very important. And we have a little bit of each one of these styles in all of us, but we tend to lean more toward one or the other. So for those of you who said you tend to be more reserved and people oriented, you are in the S category, or the stable or steady, supportive type. And these people are amazing because you are, you're so supportive. You love helping people. You're just naturally inclined to do that. You don't need the spotlight, and supportive people are needed everywhere, at work and at home. And then finally, if you said you're more reserved and task-oriented, then you are the cautious type. And the cautious type is somebody who is more conscientious. They think before they speak, whereas an I might speak before they think. And so you tend to be very results driven, but not just getting stuff done. You want to get things done with accuracy. So those 4 patterns of behavior, those 4 different styles, make up the DISC model of human behavior. And now I want to dive into each one. So again, those of you who said you're outgoing, task-oriented, you are the high Ds. And these are just some words to give you a better idea of what a high D looks like. And I think you might, for some of you, maybe you'll see some of yourself in this, or you might say like, oh my gosh, my husband or my wife or my neighbor or my coworker or whatever is this person. But you'll be able to identify it by the end of this for sure who you are. All right. So what would a high D? A high D is dominant. They're direct. They can be demanding. They're decisive. They're determined, and they're doers. They get things done, right? They're all about results. But each one of these styles, by the way, these are all the positive qualities for a high D, a dominant type. But every style has a blind spot. Every style has something that they're maybe not aware of that's not so good. Now, everyone else is aware of it. Everyone who is not a high D sees this in this person, but the high D probably doesn't see it in themselves. And that blind spot is they can sometimes appear defiant, right? They want to start a fight. They're ready to fight. Not always the case, but that's just the way it appears to be. So D's would say things like, I like to win. I like to plan for the future. I like new ideas. I like results. I like to be my own boss. I like to move fast, and I like a challenge. When you meet somebody who would think or say any of these things, chances are good they're a high D. You may be a high D because you love to get things done. You love results. You love a challenge. And again, excellent behavioral type. Even though we have a little bit of all of us, you tend to go toward one or the other. So those are the high Ds. All right, now let's dive into the high I's. The high I's, like I said, they're the fun, outgoing. They love people. They're everyone's best friend, right? They're inspiring. They're influencing. They're impressionable, interactive, impressive, and involved, right? These are the people that when you ask them, about their high school years or their college years, I can probably guarantee most of them were not math or math majors or anything, but I can guarantee you they were probably in a lot of extracurricular activities. Why? Because they love the social aspect of life. And so the I's are the people that you like to be around most times because they're fun. And that's what they really need more than anything else, is to have fun. In fact, something I didn't say is, each one of these styles, the D, the I, the S, the C, they all have a secret fuel. Okay. And each secret fuel is what we absolutely have to have in order to be happy, to be successful in life. And, these fuels, if we don't have them, it's kind of like a car engine. And if you put in the wrong fuel, if you put diesel into a regular engine, or you put regular gas into a diesel engine, it's just not going to run right. It's going to run slow. It's going to have issues. Well, the same goes with all of us. And when we don't get our fuel, we're going to run a little slow, and we're not going to be operating the way we should. And so let me go back to the D's. The D's secret fuel is getting results. If a high D person is getting results, they're happy, they're excited, they're energetic, they're all about it. But if their team and if they're not getting the results that they really want, it's so deflating, and they're just not going to have that fuel to keep going. Now, what's the I's secret fuel? The inspiring type, again, it's influencing, all of those things, their secret fuel. And again, if they don't have this at work, they don't have this at home, they're going to feel drained. They're going to just be like, ugh, but when they have this, and when they get this in a work environment or in a personal environment, they're just on fire. And the secret fuel for an inspiring type is having fun. They want to have fun. And it's really, really important to know this. If you are not a high I or a high D, or, all the others, you need to know their secret fuel in order to connect with them well. So I got a little bit off topic there, but I wanted to make sure I pointed out those secret fuels. So let's go back to the I's. Let's go back to the inspiring type. Again, wonderful qualities. These are all very positive qualities, but every style has a blind spot. And again, most of the time, the person who is in high I doesn't see this. They don't think it's true because they don't think it's just something, it's their blind spot. They don't see it. So the blind spot for the I is they can sometimes appear illogical, meaning they sometimes are just in the clouds and they're just blah, 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 blah. And to other people, they come across as not making a lot of sense. It is what it is. But Inspiring types would say things like, I like to be liked. I like to express my ideas. I like to talk about my feelings. I like to be in front of a group. They have no problem being in the center of attention. They have no problem being up there and speaking. A lot of speakers that you know probably see through these trainings are likely high I's. Depends, not everybody, but some mostly are. I's would say things like, I like surprises. Now, there's certain styles that hate surprises, but a high I, again, their secret fuel is having fun, so they want surprises. I's would say things like, I like lots of fun activities and I like recognition. Really important to know if you have an I in your life that you have to affirm them. You have to tell them they're doing a great job. They live for recognition. They crave it. It's super, super important to know that. If you are an I, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you're like, yes, if somebody's telling you you're doing a great job, you feel great. Not every style needs that, but the high I's do. So now let's talk about the supportive type. Oh, the supportive type are some of the nicest people in the world. Why? Because they are supportive. They want to help you. They're steady. They're easygoing. They're stable. Not a lot of surprises. They're sweet. They like the status quo. They don't like change. They don't like conflict. And they sometimes can appear shy. Doesn't mean they're shy, but maybe in bigger groups they can appear that way. They're more comfortable in a smaller setting. So supportive, again, beautiful, wonderful qualities of a supportive type, but their blind spot. And I hate this word, but you know what? It's an S word, and we're going with the first letter of that particular style. But this is true for an S because they wear their hearts on their sleeves and because they're so willing to help other people at any time. They can sometimes be seen as a sucker, meaning they get taken advantage of. People know they're going to do something for them if they ask. And sometimes they have a hard time with boundaries and saying no. One of the best words a supportive type can learn is that, or just concept that a supportive type can learn is that no is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain, but because you're such a giver and because you're so supportive, sometimes you can get taken advantage of. Supportive types would say things like, I like to be accepted. I like teamwork and cooperation. I like working with other people. I like sticking to what works. Again, they don't like a lot of change. I like harmony. They hate situations and environments where there's conflict or fighting. They like things to stay the same. Predictability, very important for a supportive type. And they like appreciation. Now, this is different from a high I. A high I needs recognition. They need to be told, you're doing such a great job. You killed it doing this. But an S needs to hear, I value you. I'm so glad you're a part of this team. You make everything better. They want to feel appreciated. And it's really important. So I talked about the secret fuels. The D's secret fuel is getting results. The I's secret fuel is having fun. And what about the supportive type secret fuel? What do you think it is? Right. It's being understood, it's being seen, and it's being appreciated. And when they get that, they are so on fire and they're so excited about what they're doing. And so it's really, really important. I bring up these secret fuels because it's important you give other people, even though you may or may not be that style, that you give them what they need because you want to be given these same fuels. You want other people to give them to you. And so it's important to know that. All right, so let's move on to the last one, which is the cautious type. Now, the cautious type, they're more analytical, they're thinkers, right? I's and S's are more feelers. They feel things and they like to talk about their feelings, whereas a D and a C, they're more thinkers. Right? So your D's and the C's are task oriented. The I's and the S's are people oriented. And so just knowing that. So the cautious type is, well, they're cautious. They're not like just going to jump right in. They have to ask a lot of questions. They're calculating. They're figuring everything out. They're competent though. They're very, very good at what they do in most cases because they're conscientious. They're paying attention to every little detail. They're contemplative. They have to think things through. They're not one to make a very quick decision. They need time to think about it. And they're very careful with whatever they do. And if they proceed, they're going to be sure that if they take something on, that they're going to do it and they're going to do it right. So with a C, these positive qualities make them a really great team member, a really great person, because they're so committed to excellence. But they do have a blind spot, and they usually don't see this in themselves, but everybody else sees it in them. And that is sometimes they can appear cold. Now, it doesn't mean they are cold. It just means they're so focused on getting the task done accurately that sometimes they come across whereas they're just not, they don't care about you. They don't ask questions. They're not very personable, right? So for an I and an S, they're more about the people. How was your weekend? Tell me about your kids. Oh, how are you feeling today? A C, a C is not thinking that at all. They're thinking about the task that has to be done. And because of that, sometimes people think that they're just cold or they just don't care. They do care, but they don't come across that way. So C's would say things like, I like to be right. The difference between a C and a D, because they're both very results oriented, a C is all about results, but with accuracy, meaning it has to be, don't just get a result, get it done right. They like to know, I won't even just say they like to know, they must know what is expected of them. They cannot be successful in any role, in any situation, if they don't know the expectations up front. They like an established pattern. They like systems. Don't just fly by the seat of your pants. They like clear instructions. Don't tell a C what to do unless you're going to give them explicit directions of how you want it done. They need that. They like finishing what they start. They're not one to start multiple projects and kind of jump over here and jump over there. They're going to complete it. They're going to do it until completion of excellence. And they like organizing things. There is a place for everything on their desk. Everything in their closet is usually organized, color-coded probably, right? They're very, very organized. And so those are the different ones. Now, the secret fuel for a C, and I kind of already alluded to this, is if they're getting this, they're happy, they're fueled up, they're excited about what they're doing. And that is, it goes back to the accuracy. If they're getting getting things done, but assuring that they're done right, that's exciting to them. If they're not getting that, if there's errors, if there's problems and things aren't accurate, then that causes a lot of stress for a high C type. So let's just do a little overview here. So again, the high Ds, the dominant type, are outgoing, task-oriented, and the high Is, the inspiring type, are your outgoing, people-oriented. The supportive type are your people-oriented, more reserved people, and your cautious type are the reserved, task-oriented. Now, what's really interesting about this is the percentage of the population. Believe it or not, the high Ds, the people who they're demanding, they let's get this done, they tend to be CEOs, they tend to be the leaders, because why? They're very comfortable in the lead. They're comfortable out front taking charge of things. They're comfortable with conflict and they're comfortable with challenge. But majority of the population tends to be, they tend to be a smaller number, 10%. But what's interesting, I do a lot of leadership training and corporate training for companies. I'd say 90% of the boardroom, the executives, are high Ds. But the general population, they're only about 10%, which is really interesting. Now, high Is, it's a greater percentage. 25 to 30% of the people that you're going to interact with are going to be high Is. But the supportive type is actually the highest percentage of the people tend to be supportive, which is awesome. These are the people, again, they're there to help us, and they're so kind and steady along the way. And then the cautious type are about 25% of the population. So some important things to keep in mind. If you are a high D, this is just a secret little tip, is before you can be in authority, you really need to learn to be under authority, meaning you don't always have to be in charge, because that can rub people the wrong way. And even though you're the most capable to be in charge, doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea to undermine anyone else's authority. Secret tip for a high I is, it's nice to be important, because high Is, they need to feel important, right? But it's more important to be nice. And so sometimes Is are all about the recognition. It's all about me. And sometimes it's better to just give somebody else that recognition every now and then. And for a C, a high C, their secret tip was, really people don't care how much you know. You're so smart. You have so much in terms of knowledge and author and so much to offer, but people need to know you care. So never, ever, ever forget that even though you're focused on a task, every now and then look up Smile. Let people know that the human aspect as well as the capable aspect of yourself. And then finally, for the supportive type, something to remember is, you may actually help people by saying no, having boundaries. Don't always be in that sucker that is available on any given notice. So saying no is actually a good thing. One last thing I'll point out here is that each one of these also have a symbol. So the high D symbol is an exclamation mark. Why? Because everything is explicit. It's like important. It's boom, 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 right? Exclamation. Whereas the high I is a star, right? Ooh, the gold star. It's a red star, but like, ooh, give me a star. Tell me I've done something good, right? That's their symbol. The S symbol is a plus minus sign because really they could go one way or the other. They're very even keel. Not too excited, not too down. They're just kind of steady. And then the cautious type, the C, their symbol is a question mark because they're always asking questions. They are never just going to take the information in and just say, okay. They're going to ask questions for clarifying because of accuracy. So where you fall, I'm not 100% sure, but I have a hunch you have a pretty good idea after me going through those slides. So I'm excited to hear, and I would love to know what your style is. Now, there is a way to find out definitively, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, I want to focus in. That was understanding yourself. Now let's figure out, well, okay, now that I know who I am, how the heck do I figure out what someone else's style is? Well, there is actually a way to do it. And it's so important. In fact, it's probably more important that you understand other people as much as you know yourself. But you can't really understand others till you know yourself. And that's why we start there. But now it's important that you understand other people's styles, because in order to really effectively communicate with them, you're going to have to maybe do things a little bit different if it's different from your style. So how do we know, without them taking an assessment, how do you know what your boss is, or how do you know what your coworker is, or how do you know what your spouse or your child is? Well, there's two questions that I can guarantee, no matter who it is, you can pretty much figure out which of the four quadrants they fall in. And those two questions should sound familiar because I asked them to you. First question: are they more outgoing or more reserved? You may not know everything they do, and you don't have to ask them these questions, but you can tell by their behavior and just some little clues on, are they more outgoing or more reserved? For example, an outgoing person talks a little bit faster. A reserved person talks a little bit slower and a little quieter. An outgoing person walks a little bit faster. A reserved person is more deliberate and they take their time in doing things. So would you say, even if you're just observing them, are they more animated and more hi, or are they more cautious and they wait for you to speak to them? Those are all clues on, are they more outgoing or more reserved? That's the first question. And then the second question is, are they more task oriented or more people oriented? Again, you can tell without asking them or even spending a ton of time with them. You know somebody who's a people oriented person because they're upbeat, they're excited, they're usually asking you questions, they're not shy, they're usually the ones to go in and say hello first, they shake their hand, there's just, again, animation. But they care. They're asking questions. They're understanding. They're listening. Those tend to be more people-oriented person, which is more of a task person. Is somebody, again, they like to get things done. It's about results. It's kind of like, here's a good example of this. So let's just say there's a work project going on, and a task-oriented person would say something like, you know what, we may have upset Susie Q, or we may have lost Tim along the way, but you know what, we got it done. We got the project done. We executed, and we just kind of consider the people that didn't come along with us as collateral damage, right? It is just part of the process, but we got the results. Whereas a people-oriented person on that same scenario would say, like, yeah, we got the results. We did what we set out to do, but we hurt her feelings, or he quit along the way. Like, that's a people-oriented person. So no right, no wrong. It's just different. You look at one or the other. So these two questions really can tell you everything you need to know about someone by just asking them those questions. And why is this important? Well, here's why. You will see that when you give someone their secret fuel, when you give them what they really want, people want to be treated fairly. They want to be treated the way they want to be treated. And when you make an effort to do that, even when it's not your style, people notice, and it improves trust, it improves communication, and it's so crucial. Now I'll give you an example. So I am, this may or may not surprise you, but I'm a high I. Now my S is equally as high. I'm a very, very strong people person. I right there, pretty much at the very top. Next comes my D, but it's quite a bit lower. I'm more kind of a midline D, and then I have pretty much no C. I have absolutely no. I'm just not that detail spreadsheet driven kind of girl. I'm just not, and that's okay, right? We're all different. But I married a very, very high C, off the chart C, right? So he's organized, he's detailed. And yes, are we opposites? 100%. But does it work? Yes, because we balance each other out. And in fact, I's can seem a little illogical and in the clouds. Well, C's can kind of pull you down a little bit. All right, let's bring it back. No more daydreaming. Let's get back to reality a little. Whereas, I's can help a C have a little bit more fun and not take life so serious, and see things from a different perspective. So it works really, really well. And you'll notice this once you determine your style. We tend to see a lot of marriages of opposites, a lot of D's with S's. Why? Because a high D has to be in control and they have to be in charge. And an S loves to be the supportive type to help that high D. Whereas an S doesn't like to take the lead, and they love that their high D is going to take charge and make decisions for them. And the same goes for the I's and the C's, like I just gave you my example. So some things to think about. But going back to my family, so what's interesting is, so my oldest son is an S, so I'm a high I. My oldest son is an S, and my husband is a C, and my youngest son is a D. Now his I is really high too, but he has a lot of D. So it's interesting that we have 4 different personality styles within our home. So as a high I know not to approach my husband when there's an important conversation about money, or about, like, if we're working towards something. I can't just come with like, oh, I feel like we should do this, kind of like just daydreaming. I need to come with facts, and I need to come prepared, right? Or as if I'm talking to my more people-oriented son, we tend to talk about, feelings and things like that. And so when you understand other people, you understand that, just because they didn't get excited about what I'm excited about doesn't mean they don't approve. Or maybe they were a little aloof, doesn't mean that they don't like you. Or it's when you understand, oh, they're a high C, and that's just the way they are. They're more focused on getting something done. Or maybe there's somebody who's a high D in your life, and they're very abrasive and they're very loud, and they sometimes just yell at you. If you see now that they're a high D, and it's not necessarily that they're upset with you, it's how they handle problems, and it's how they handle life, right? They take charge. They run to challenge, whereas an S runs away from challenge. So again, when you start to see that people are different, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. And when you understand that, and now you're able to adapt and change and shift a little bit to their style, that's when relationships improve. And it's really, it's a phenomenon. And I could talk about this all day, because I love the human behavior side of things, in business and just in life, but it's so applicable. And what's really interesting is, once you learn this and you really get a good sense of this, and you really know who you are, and then you really start to understand other people and adapt it, it's really interesting, because you can't unlearn it. Like you just know it. And now wherever I go, I mean, I can spend 2 seconds with someone and I'll be like, oh, that's a high D. Okay. Oh, that's an S. Look how sweet. She's offering her seat. I can see it so quickly, and you will too. It's just a matter of really mastering, understanding yourself, and then asking those questions for other people in your life. Now, there is a way that you can 100% know for sure what your style is. And I don't mean just one style, because here's the other thing I didn't say. You're not just a high D. You're not just an I or an S or a C. In fact, I mentioned it earlier, we're all a little bit of each and every one of those styles. So we all have a blend. And a style blend is basically, you could have 2 high Ds, but their blend may be different. So even though they're high Ds, they may act totally different depending on their level of their other styles. So I won't get into the weeds on that, but just know that you really can get a definitive answer on your style and who you are. And you can also do this for other people in your life. And so one of the ways you can do that is by taking an assessment. I am a certified human behavior consultant, and so I have the ability to administer these assessments. So if you'd like some information on that, you can just email me at or email our office at support@michelleprince.com, and we'll get you information. Just send an email saying that you saw this training and you want some more information on getting some disc profiles, and we'll get those to you. But even without a formal assessment, you really, really, truly can understand yourself by really figuring out, generally speaking, are you more outgoing, more reserved? Are you more task oriented or more people oriented? And those two things are going to tell you which one of those four quadrants you end in, and then do some research to find out a little bit more about it. But hopefully this gave you some information to get you started. And that's really the whole point in this, is to get you started. But going back to where we started with your seeds of greatness, all of us have something within us that is so great. And really, there's nothing better in life when you're meshing with other people, your relationships are strong, you're understanding each other, they're understanding you. Life is good, right? When we understand and admire these seeds of greatness within other people, even if they're different. And this DISC model of human behavior is one of the best ways that I know to help you to see that and to have greater connection and greater clarity in your relationships. So thank you all so much. Again, reach out if we can help in any way. The website is michelleprince.com, or email us at support@michelleprince.com. Make it a great day. Thanks, everyone.